this is the only normal part, and that looks fine. So if
God damn it.
And if that's not enough, then the difference between bright and dark is contrast. And so in these situations, I might need a lower contrast. And that's not a bad way to start either. So I'll bring it up, I get a greater difference between bright and dark. Bring it down, I get less. When you get less, you'll find that if you bring it down to a certain point, your image will start looking a little bit bland and almost foggy-ish, kind of. That's going to happen when you start getting gaps on the end of your histogram. And you can fix it with the blacks and whites sliders anytime you see gaps or spikes. Or you can sometimes fix it by bringing up clarity, just to get a little bit more boost in that image. I'm going to fine tune this a little more. Just go back to the sliders. And lights. In old versions of Lightroom, I would start getting worried if I moved the sliders this far. There used to be a slider that was called fill light. It's the equivalent to shadows. And if you moved it this far, you would start getting halos around the edge of trees and other things. That doesn't happen with the newer versions of Lightroom. So if you use Lightroom for quite some time and you're used to the older versions of the sliders, you might be going, oh, geez, is he ever going to zoom up on this picture or something? Because it's going to look terrible. No, the new version looks great when you zoom up. The old version looked like halos and other stuff, especially with clarity. If you ever bought clarity up, you had glowing trees and buildings. You don't anymore, not with this version. Okay. I'm right now ignoring the color sliders, anything to do with color, because that's our next session. We talk about adjusting color. Okay? I can make these look better by making them more colorful and other things. So here's another one, same place. This one, the image as a whole, I think is mainly what's outside. I might darken a little bit there. And then decide, what do I want to do with the shadows? Do I want him as a silhouette, or do I want to see what's going on there? So I might bring shadows up, see if I want to see him. Shadows are up as high as they can go. Usually when that's the case, I would actually switch to something called the tone curve. We haven't talked about that yet. Just as a preview, you can click on this donut. That's what I call it. Donut there. Under tone curve, if you just scroll down a little bit, then you can click on your picture and say, I want stuff that's this bright, be bright. You can get even more out of it. But we haven't talked about that yet. So I'm staying away from that, limiting to what we talked about. Might adjust clarity here, that kind of thing. Sometimes, though, if you find that you just can't get enough out of the image, let's say it's shadows, I just can't get it bright enough in there, go and adjust exposure. Say, take the image as a whole and brighten it until he starts looking okay. And if your highlights go too far, then just go down to the highlight slider and say, mellow out the highlights. Because sometimes your exposure gets kind of in your way, and it limits how far you can move your shadows or your highlights. And so if I find I'm at the limit of one of those two sliders, either highlights or shadows, and I wish it could go further, then go and adjust exposure. If it's only one of those two sliders at its max, in whatever area gets too bright or dark as the result, go to its appropriate slider and adjust it, either highlights or shadows. So I don't think that looks too bad. With that. Now with these, I'm not always thinking about the histogram. The histogram, I'll improve my image the more I get used to when I'm done glancing at the histogram. And I'll improve my images more, refine them more, the more I check if I have a small area of black when I'm done. But sometimes I'm lazy, sometimes I'm in a hurry, sometimes I need to cover some other feature in Lightroom and I'm teaching, and I don't think to do it. But just so you know, if I really was going for the highest quality, when I was done, I would glance at the histogram. There's a gap on the right, that means whites. I could bring it up until it kisses the end and say, does that look any better? And it might. The highlight on the temple that's out there is going to end up getting closer to white, and it's going to look more like a bright reflection there, and it can help. But don't stress about the